When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Well, is this the last chance for Anglos to fight back against proposed changes to the Official Languages Act, the Federal Official Languages Act? Let's welcome back Andrew Caddell onto the program. He's president of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Elias. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you have an open letter that's been published. It's a call on Canada's Minister of Justice and Attorney General to drop proposed changes to the Official Languages Act. It's known as Bill C-13. You may see Bill C-13 in the headlines as well. And it urges that if it's not dropped, it would show an alliance of federal support to the notwithstanding clause and disregard the minority language rights of English-speaking Quebecers. Andrew, why don't you give our listeners here off the top maybe the latest developments on the saga of Bill C-13 and the reimagining of the Official Languages Act?
Well, there's a few things. One is that our group, which has thousands of members, both who have signed up and also online, has chosen to ally with the Quebec Community Groups Network, which has sent this letter to David Lametti, who's the Minister of Justice and also a member of Parliament for La Salle-Mar, which is in Montreal, and who is presumably, because although Italian is his mother tongue, he does speak English and did grow up in Ontario and moved to Quebec several decades ago, is part of our Anglophone community. And so we've sent this letter, the Quebec Community Groups Network, allying with other groups like ours, has sent this letter because, and I'll tell you why we are backing it, is that we want to show that the entire Quebec community of people who speak English, of English-speaking Quebecers, support this initiative because it's so important to fight this bill. Because what it does is it provides an asymmetrical approach to the treatment of language communities, of providing services or providing incentives, in that Francophone minorities outside Quebec will be favored and given favorable treatment compared to Anglophones. And at the same time, Parliament would change federal law to acquiesce to the Charter of the French language. That means that it means that the Charter of the French language would become part, effectively, of the Official Languages Act. And the Charter of the French language, as we know, uses the notwithstanding clause to deny fundamental rights and freedoms of our minority community in Bill 96, and that is now essentially the Charter of the French language. So on so many levels, it is unfair, and it fails to recognize that we have the same kinds of rights as minorities among our 1.25 million English-speaking Quebecers as Francophones outside Quebec should have. And I'm worried, as somebody who has fought for Francophone rights outside Quebec, as well as minority rights within, that there will be a backlash to this. You've already seen it in New Brunswick, where they've taken away French immersion, where goodness knows what could be next. Saskatchewan and Alberta declaring themselves independent and may refuse to submit to federal law. Well, one of those federal laws might be the application of French language services. It creates, where the federal government for many years we thought was our guarantor of our rights. It appears now that the centre is just not holding, and in fact the centre is complicit with the Quebec government in trying to suppress the rights of Anglophone Quebec.
Okay, let's talk about that point. The centre is not holding. Perhaps the centre is complicit here, right? Because there are Montreal area MPs that have been on the record, that they're not happy with some of the proposed changes to the Official Languages Act. I'm thinking of Anthony Housefather, who's been quite vocal that he's still trying to work to make sure this bill does see some changes here. But I sort of feel like those calls are falling on deaf ears here. So let's talk about that aspect of this. Are those voices being drowned out? Like and that battle?
Well, there's been a recent development. That last night, there was a compromise effected in the Committee on Official Languages of the House of Commons. And the compromise is rather than hearing people until February, or having hearings until February. And of course, our group was ignored. Our brief is online, but we were told that they didn't have enough time for us. But they did have enough time to listen to Apéritif Français, which is a group that spends most of its time insulting Anglophones. Mm-hmm. So rather than David Lametti or Anthony Housefather being part of the hearings in the committee, or people like Eric Maldoff who have been refused because they canceled the further hearings in order to try to get the bill through by Christmas. The compromise is that 4 ministers are going to speak to the committee, one at a time over 2 hours over the next few weeks, and it may go into January. And those 4 ministers are, listen to this, Mona Fortier, who's from Ottawa, Giselle Petit-Pot-Taylor, who's from New Brunswick and who's the Minister of Official Languages, Pablo Rodriguez, who's the Minister of Heritage and who's a very, very strong nationalist and actually doesn't believe that there's any such thing as a Quebec Anglophone community, and Sean Fraser, who's from Nova Scotia and who's the Minister for Refugees and Immigration. So those are the 4. Now, David Lametti is not in that list, and David Lametti is the person that we've directed our letter to, or the QCGN has directed its letter to. And he's the Justice Minister, and presumably the Justice Minister should have something to say about Quebec law being integrated into federal law.
And I know there was a hope that they try and pass this bill before the Christmas break. That's not going to happen here with this compromise, right?
That's correct.
Is that a good sign, at least, that any hope of this bill, in its faulty interpretation right now, that it's not going to pass this year, at least that's been pushed till next year?
Well, with the way we work with the bicameral House, with two houses of Parliament, the bill would then go to the Senate in February or March, and then it would be up to the Senate to discuss and to look over and have hearings of its own. We've applied to go to the Senate hearings, and we've got our brief on their side as well. The leader of the Senate in the government in the Senate is Mark Gold, who is from Montreal and who's an Anglophone from Montreal. So it'll be interesting to see where he stands on this. And then there's a rumor that there might be an election next spring or early summer. And if that were the case, then Parliament would be prorogued. So, it's a mess. Your guess is as good as mine as what's going to happen. It's something, if you go back to the original B&B Commission and the original Official Languages Act, it was very simple. Official languages meant that you could be served in your language if you were one of the 2 majority languages in Canada. That was it. It wasn't that everybody should be bilingual. It wasn't that everybody that any Anglophone was a threat to the French language in Quebec. It was nothing of that. All it was that you got services and that you were supposed to be recognized as one or the other language communities. And what we're saying is, why, if you're going to provide incentives to Francophones outside Quebec, why not provide the same sort of incentives and recognition to Anglophones in Quebec? All you're doing is providing services and ensuring that people who work in English on their jobs in federally regulated companies would be able to continue to do that. But in the new bill, that wouldn't be possible. If you're an Anglophone working for Air Canada, your job is grandfathered, but the instant you retire, it would no longer be a job that would be in English only.
Andrew, the open letter from the QCGN to David Lametti, so many people assigning their name to this letter. Do you know, has there been any response with the Justice Minister?
Not that I know of, but I've just been told by the QCGN that they've hit 2,000 people. And if you think about it, we used to say in radio that for every letter you got, it represented at least 100 to 500 listeners. So yeah. I think I would hope that those 2,000 signatures represent tens of thousands more people.
Andrew, we have to leave it there, but thanks for providing us an update on Bill C-13. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Elias.
That's Andrew Caddell. He's president of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy. If you want to see that letter, by the way, go to the QCGN, the Quebec Community Groups Network website, and they've got that open letter to David Lametti.